I'm Chef Paul Hayward. Today we're going to make choux pastry, which we're going to pipe into eclairs. So to start, we're going to go through all of the ingredients with choux pastry. Choux pastry is a very simple recipe, but nowadays it's a very complex situation because people want the perfect choux, and to get the perfect choux we have to change and use innovation to help us. So we're going to go through each ingredient and I'm going to explain in detail what it is and why. So the first ingredient is the eggs. Here we're actually using pasteurized liquid eggs. They've been pasteurized already, completely liquid, and basically these work for me best in the choux pastry. Okay, because some of the water has also been evaporated, so they don't have as much moisture inside. With choux pastry, what creates them to rise is steam. Steam is water, water is in the eggs, but once it's rose, we want to remove that steam. This is what causes a soggy choux inside. So if you don't have pasteurized, you can use fresh, but what I recommend is blend the whole eggs, strain them through a fine strainer, and try and make it the day before. This will kind of help evaporate some of the moisture inside, and it'll basically create a much better choux for you. So fresh eggs, blend them the day before, pass them through a fine strainer, keep them in the fridge for one day. Next thing, we have milk and water. Traditionally, the choux paste only has milk. We've discovered over practice after practice, if you use the milk, it actually stops some of the cracking in the choux pastry when it cooks. Also helps with the flavor, adds a more nicer flavor to the choux pastry. So this is about the structure. The butter. This butter is 84% sheet butter, also known as dry butter. Now, what is this? This is butter we use to make croissants with. So it's a laminating butter. Now the difference with this, it has a different higher melting point, and also it has less water content than a normal butter. So again, we're adding the flavor without adding more water, because the water we want to remove from the choux once it's being cooked. So again, this is a big difference. Making 84% butter, normally for most of my cooking I use 82% butter. So you need to go to, now you can buy this stuff online quite easily, but you need to look for lamination butter or 84% or dry butter. These are the names you need to search for. The next thing, hardly see the ingredients, very smaller quantity. It's inverted sugar. Inverted sugar will help keep the choux moist after it's been cooked. So it will help with the texture and the structure of the eclair. If you don't have inverted sugar, you can use honey. It is very similar, but not as good. Again, these ingredients can be found online. Then we have salt and sugar, normal ingredients, okay? Flour, we're using bread flour. Why? Because it's got more gluten inside. This is going to help us pull all the ingredients together, develop that gluten to give it a better structure in the eclair. So again, try not to use cake and all-purpose. If you do, you can make a choux, it will work, but if you want professional results, you need to use the professional ingredients. So this is the bread flour. Okay, so we're gonna get started. First thing we're going to do is we're going to add the milk, the water. I'm just going to turn on the stove, start heating, the butter, the inverted sugar, and again it's a very small amount, so please make sure you either scrape everything out of your container or weigh it directly into the pot. Then you don't have to do the job twice. Normally if I'm making this, I would have the pot on the scale, weigh the milk, weigh the water, weigh the butter, all the first ingredients would be into the pot, saves all the little dishes. And if you've got to wash up, it's no fun. Okay, so we've got all salt and the sugar in there as well. So the two remaining ingredients are the flour and the eggs. So first we want to do is we want to bring this to a boil, but we want to make sure that by the time it comes to a boil, everything is melted. We don't want to have it boiling away and the butter still floating around. So give it a stir. If you need to bring it to a boil on a medium heat, you need to do that. This butter's been sitting out for a little while, so it's softer. So it should be melted by the time everything comes to the boil. Otherwise, by the time the butter has basically melted, maybe 10% of your liquid has been evaporated. So again, it's going to change your recipe. Okay, so the liquids have all come to the boil. The butter is all melted at the same time. we're going to off the heat. So it's not directly on the heat. The pan is not heating right now. We're going to take the flour. We're going to add the flour. We're going to use in a small whisk. We're going to combine the two. Now traditionally, when I was taught, we threw the flour in on the heat, we stirred it with a spoon, and the thing is half cooking before we've even started mixing. So this way, it just makes a lot more sense, and it works much better, because we don't want it to start cooking until everything is nice and combined. Okay, so it's all combined now. Now what we're going to do is just take all that out of the whisk. You just keep tapping. So now we're going to cook it. So if you can see the texture, it's now come together. It's nice and thick, but now this is full of water. So the next thing we're going to need to do is we need to dry this out to remove as much moisture as we can. So we're going to put it back on full heat. Now, one of the things I always remember from cooking school when I was younger was they say cook it until it comes away from the sides of the pan, and it's come straight away from the pan now. So I mean, these tricks that you got back at school sometimes not the best scientific way. So we need to keep cooking this, and now you'll see the steam coming away. The steam is water, it's just evaporating. So now as the pan gets hot again, all of a sudden you're going to see so much steam coming away from this. So this is where a lot of people go wrong. They put it straight into here. You have too much water still in the mix. So this is a very, very important step. Even though the bottom of the pan will start to form a skin, don't worry about it, it's not burning, it's normal. But you'll see it's getting smoother now, the texture's getting smoother. It'll always come away from the sides, like the teachers tell you, but this one is actually, you're seeing all of the steam coming away. Okay, so now we've cooked it, we're going to take it, pour it straight into the machine. Okay, so the next step, we're now going to mix this and we're going to allow it to cool. The purpose of the mixing it is we're going to release the steam and the heat from the choux. So all of this in a minute is going to be full of steam. And we're going to mix this until it gets nice and cool. Just a medium speed. All we want to do is just let that steam disperse. And the easy way to tell it is when you touch the bowl now, it's boiling hot. This bowl should be just lukewarm when we start to add the eggs. Okay, we're now going to just check the temperature of the dough. We want it to be around 45 degrees or a little bit less. Perfect, it's actually 44 degrees. So what we're going to do now is close the machine back up again. We're going to start to add the cold eggs from the fridge. So we're just going to add, to start with, you can add about half of the eggs. I'm just going to mix on a slow speed. Wait till that's fully combined. Then this is what we want to do from this point on, is make sure it's completely mixed, the next stage of eggs. So each one letting a small amount of eggs, letting it mix in before we add the next stage. Now we want to make sure it's really well mixed, but we don't want to add too much air. Now the attachment I'm using is a scraper beater, which works really well. It's scraping the sides, not mixing so much. So we don't want to add too much air to the choux pastry, because when we pipe, it will keep popping. There'll be bubbles inside the choux pastry. As we pop, it'll be pipe, pop, 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 pop. You'll have holes in your choux. When it cooks, it's going to affect the choux. All right, so there we have our choux pastry. So the texture should be still nice and firm. Now this choux, you want it around 30 degrees for piping. Why 30 degrees? Because the texture will be at the right stage. So when you pipe, you will keep the shape. You don't want it to be too soft where it flows. So I'm just going to take the temperature again. But if your mix is at 45 degrees, when we cool it down and we add the eggs from the chiller, it should automatically go to around 30 degrees straight away. So this is by using a little bit of science and technology that we're at 29 degrees. So basically we're ready for piping. So the mix is all ready, and we're now ready to do the next stage, which will be preparing the shapes. Okay, so now we're going to pipe the choux pastry into eclair shapes. So again, I'm going to show you two methods, the traditional, and I'm going to show you the modern way of doing this. So I think it makes life much easier, much more consistent, especially if you don't have the skill of piping. So we're going to show you both ways. So with this one, I'm actually using this is a 16mm French star nozzle, which is a very close star nozzle with lots and lots of grooves inside. So this one helps the choux open more evenly and prevents the cracking. So this is a very important step. Okay, so we're going to put the choux paste into the bag. And it's better to get as much choux as you can inside the bag at one time, because we want to limit the amount of air inside. So once the choux is in, we're going to push it down the bag. It's going to come out. Okay. So what we're using here, this is basically it's called an air mat. It has little eclair shapes, well, bigger shape. This is the large one actually. Large eclair shapes, the slight indents into the mat. So this will help you get a perfect shape of your eclair. These can be bought online. Many different brands sell them in many different colors. So what we're going to do, again, I recommend grabbing a small amount of choux in your bag. Don't try and grab from the top. It makes life much more difficult. We're going to start at the end of the mold, gently squeeze and stop, pull up and back. Okay. So again, we're going to pipe straight, and then we're going to lift up. And then we go back up. Okay, so this is the traditional way. Now the not so traditional way. So what we're going to do is much easier. We're going to pipe straight lines. So basically, if you think the size of the eclair, we're just going to basically pipe a strip and we're going to cut it once it's frozen. So we're just going to go onto the tray. Next step, we're going to put some crackling on some of these, and these ones we're going to freeze. So we're going to move on to the next step. Now we're going to make chocolate ganache for the eclairs. This is going to be used to flavour the pastry cream into chocolate pastry cream, and also we're going to use it to dip in the eclair to make the nice glaze, shiny glaze for the top. First we're going to take the 35% whipping cream, pour that into the pot. The milk, full fat milk. We're going to put that on to boil. While this is coming to boil, we will take the chocolate, this is dark chocolate, and put this into the measuring jug. Now, if you want to make milk chocolate or white chocolate, you'll have to reduce the cream or increase the chocolate, because the cocoa butter content in this, which makes it set hard, is much higher in a dark chocolate than in a milk and a white. In a milk chocolate, you have lots of milk powder, and in a white chocolate, you have lots of sugar. So you need to adjust. The setting agent is this. So you need to put more white chocolate or dark chocolate, probably by 20 to 30%. Now the chocolate's inside the jug, we're going to put the soft butter on top. So this one's just been left outside just to soften. Cream is now coming to the boil, and the cream and the milk. So we're just going to turn this off. Pour this straight over the top. And then we're just going to give that a little shake. Basically, just ensuring that cream is covering all the chocolate everywhere. This is going to help the chocolates already starting to melt and soften. Okay, so now we take the blender, we go into the chocolate. Going up and down and around the jug. So what is happening here is the temperature of the milk and the cream is melting the chocolate. At the same time it's melting, it's also cooling everything down. Okay, so there is our ganache. We can use this for many, many different things. We can use it as a coating, we can actually leave it to cool, use it as a filling for a cake, we can dip it as a glaze, we can heat it, make it hot. use it as a sauce. Such a versatile recipe. Okay, so now we're going to finish the eclairs. Over this side is the traditional one that we piped, and over here is the modern version, my top tip. So this is the frozen version. So right now you see they're very frozen, but they defrost very, very fast. So we're just going to take these off the sheet. So basically now the frozen eclairs are on the tray, we're going to cut them to length. Now the easiest way is you're just going to measure the mat. The mat itself is 12 centimeters, so that's the size we want to cut. Now if there's any holes in there, for instance, make sure you try and cut the holes away. So we're going to go here, 12, cut through. Again, just take it out of the freezer, it's going to defrost really fast. There you have, so it's 11 centimeters. We're going to put it into the 12 centimeter mat. So the next step now, we're going to get the crackling. We're going to cut the crackling to put on some of the eclairs again, so you can see some with and some without, so you can see the difference. So here is the crackling, still frozen. So we're using the ruler, the eclairs will cut at 11, the mat is 12. We're going to cut the length at 12 centimeters. So we're just going to mark with the ruler and the knife. It's better to use a knife than this, or even a pizza wheel will work, but it's obviously with the crunchy sugar inside, you can hear it crunching. So then what I do is a small stepped palette knife. We're going to slide underneath each piece to release it from the tray. Again, it's getting soft, it's melting very fast, so we have to work quickly. We're going to place it over the eclair. Now the best thing with this, my other trick, if you see an eclair has a hole in, this is the eclair you want to focus to put the crackling on if you're going to do both types. This is going to hide it. So the nice perfect ones you can keep any other way. So we're just draping that on the top, make sure it's in the center, and that's ready to go. And then we keep going. If this gets too soft and it's breaking when you're picking it up, you can always put it back in the freezer for a few minutes. Okay, so the next thing, we're going to preheat the oven, ready for the cooking the eclairs. Okay, so now we're going to set the oven. Now the important thing to remember when you're going to cook choux is you need to start with a hotter temperature to get the lift, and then afterwards you need to lower the temperature to basically dry the choux out for a long period of time. So you remove all the moisture from the inside of the oven. So we're going to hit set. First of all, we're going to go to 170 degrees. Time, we're going to do 10 minutes. Fan speed 1. Once we hit start, the oven will do smart preheating. It will heat the inside chamber, all the metal walls, everything to the temperature, and then it will let us know when it's ready so we can put the choux into the oven. Normal ovens, just basically the air temperature heats up. Once we open the door, we'll lose all that temperature. This is especially important when we come to choux pastry, where we need to make sure we have that boost of heat at the beginning. Now you see the smart preheating. It will tell us when the oven is completely heated. This will change in time depending on if the oven has been used earlier in the day or it's starting from fresh and it's completely cold. Okay, the oven is beeping, it's telling us it's ready. Time to put the eclairs in the oven, ready to bake. Now the timer will start automatically and the alarm will beep when it's ready and the door will open. So we just have to wait. Okay, so the oven alarm is going off, the eclairs are ready to come out. So here we have the two types of eclairs, the modern way and the traditional way. Both cooked at the same time, evenly and consistently in the oven. And as you can see, there's hardly any difference. The fresh one is slightly more rounded and this one has a little bit more cracks inside and with the crackling, but overall a very, very good choux pastry, nice and light. It will be nice and hollow. As it cools down, we'll cut into it to see the inside, so you can see that. Due to the Air Plus technology in the UNOX oven, all the items cook evenly. What does this mean? The fan in the back rotates one way and pushes the heat into certain corners of the oven. Then it stops, rotates the opposite way, it pushes heat into the other corners. So all of the oven is continuously being equally distributed. So unlike other ovens where you have to change the trays to different shelves and rotate the trays, this never has to happen in UNOX. You have perfect, consistent cooking every time. Okay, now we're going to do going to cut the eclair so you can see the inside. So you can see the difference between the traditional and the modern method. So first of all, we have here, this is the traditional method, baked straight away. You can see it's nice and hollow all the way through, a very thin crust. And then here we have the one that we froze first. Here is the proof. This is the traditional method, cooked directly. This is the method that we froze, cooked afterwards. Both at the same time, both at the same temperature. This one, nice and thin shell, slightly smaller, didn't have as much lift as the fresh one, but perfect results, consistent every time. I mean, these are amazing eclairs, nice and hollow, easy to fill, very, very light. Okay, so we're going to make the pastry cream. First thing we're going to do is pour the milk, which has been mixed with the vanilla, into the pan. Now, here we're using vanilla extract with the seeds inside, but you could use vanilla essence, you could use saffron, you can use cinnamon, anything you want, you can flavour your pastry cream. Okay, so this is now, we're going to put this onto high heat. While this is coming to the heat, we're going to mix the base together. So we're going to take the eggs, the yolks, the sugar, and the corn flour. And we're going to just basically mix this together until it's a smooth paste. Pastry cream for me is one of the important basic recipes of pastry. This one can be used so much for so many things. It's important just to get the basics right. This is just a basic custard. It can be modified in many, many ways. So we're just going to bring that milk to a boil. We make the pastry cream, we can soften it, whisk it until it's nice and smooth and cold. We can add whipped cream to it, we can add flavors to it. There's so many things we can do with this. Okay, just coming to a boil now. I'm going to take some of the milk and pour it over. We're just basically mixing it all so it's combined. Then we're going to pour this back into the boiling liquid. The stove is still on full, and then we're going to stir. Now, if you don't stir properly, it can catch on the bottom of the pan and start to burn. So it's important, make sure you go around the outside of the pan with your whisk. Your whisk is not too big. And my trick is, once you feel it start to thicken, remove from the heat and carry on stirring until it's thickened, and then we're going to put it back on the heat to cook. Right now we're on full power. Okay, now it's finished. It's boiled for about 30 seconds. It's finished thickening. We're going to take that off the heat for a second. Then I want it to cool fast. So if you want things to cool fast, you need to have more surface area, which is basically just a little bit of science. So we've got a shallow metal tray, so only a couple of centimeters thick. I've lined it with an industrial cling film. This is heat proof. You have to make sure you have an industrial cling film if you're going to do this way, because if you don't, what will happen is your cling film will melt. So otherwise you can put it into a container, you can put baking paper or something straight on the top, because we want to cover the surface directly with the cover, otherwise it will form a skin. So now this is covered like this, we're going to just take the cling film, place it over the top, push this directly onto the top of the surface to prevent it forming a skin. This is one of my top tricks. And then basically we can put that somewhere room temperature to cool down for a little while, and then we can put this into the fridge or freezer to cool it down rapidly. That's it, pastry cream. Okay, so the pastry cream is now gone chilled, nice and cold. We've removed the top sheet of the pastry cream, the cling film that was on the top. As you can see now, it's got firmed up nicely. So this one is more of a culinary recipe, where when I say culinary, it's nothing really weighed out. It all depends on the customer, because the chocolate is quite strong. The custard, you can have it very light in chocolate, or you can have it very dark in chocolate, depending on your personal preference. So all we're going to do is take some of the pastry cream, put it into the bowl, and then we're going to just take the hand whisk, just give it a whisk, until it's smooth. Very easy. Now the ganache we made earlier, it's just been left out at room temperature because we're also going to use it for a glaze. We just basically put a spoonful of this to start with, mix, and then you could decide by tasting or by the colour if you want more or less. I would like to have it really nice and dark chocolate, so we're going to add a bit more. Now this is ganache, so on its own it will set firm, but it will not set rock solid like chocolate. So if you do just use melted chocolate into this, the flavour, I would suggest adding just a little bit of milk, which will make the pastry cream just that little bit softer, so it's more enjoyable to eat. One of my tips. So now I have the colour that I want. It looks perfect for me. I know that's going to taste great. We're now going to put this in the chiller until we're ready to fill the eclairs, and then the ganache and everything will firm up together slightly more. Okay, so the eclairs have cooled down. We have the chocolate pastry cream made. We're going to fill the bag and fill the eclairs. So we're going to do these two different styles. So one, we've trimmed a little bit off the top of the eclair, and we're going to use the base to glaze. The crackling, we're going to put the glaze on the top. This gives you two different kinds of textures when you eat it. So we're going to do two different ways, kind of modern and a more classic way. So what we're going to do is we're going to make two holes, one at the front, one at the back. This way it makes sure that the pastry cream gets filled through the whole eclair. Okay, so now we're going to put the chocolate pastry cream inside the bag. So again, we're going to hold the bag over the container, bring the eclair to it, and we're going to squeeze until we feel it full, and the same on this side. And we just clean off the bottom. Okay, so once we fill these, we're going to place them inside the freezer for 5 minutes. The reason why, we want to make the eclair nice and cold so that when we put the glaze on the top, the glaze will set quickly. If the eclair is at room temperature, the glaze has a chance of running off. So it just helps you make a nicer, cleaner finish. So we'll put this in the freezer 5 minutes, then we'll get them out. Okay, so the eclairs are now filled with the chocolate pastry cream. The ganache we made earlier, we've warmed slightly, so it's liquid, but it's not watery. And we're going to use this also to glaze. So first of all, we're going to pick up the eclair, hold it on the ends. I'll probably hold it by the sides. We're going to dip it in, then lift it up and out so the excess drops off. So here we have the finished product, the chocolate eclair. We have the classic, we have the modern. The modern has a little bit more crunch, almost like a Ferrero Rocher finish with the crackling. You have the nice crispy choux, which is a soft center filled with vanilla pastry cream, flavored with the chocolate ganache. The same chocolate ganache used on the top as a glaze, and then over here the same but without the crackling. So you have a nice Eclaire, the chocolate silky pastry cream inside, and the ganache on the top with a nice shine. Enjoy the recipe.